should have their hand up. What kind of stuff are you doing? Barbecues, fireworks? Barbecues? Barbecues are good on 4th of July, kind of a traditional thing. I don't really remember them having a barbecue on the sun, Declaration of Independence. But what the heck, it's a good addition. It's a good addition. Yeah, the building they were in, we were in Philly and went into Independence Hall where all that stuff was signed. And it's like, yeah, I don't think I want to light a fire inside that building. I don't think it'll last all that long. Terry and I are going up to our son's house, Tom, up in, actually to his friend's house up in Rockland County. He does every 4th of July something that he calls controlled chaos. Controlled chaos is an afternoon party. People bring dishes and stuff. Terry's bringing her red, white, and blue deviled eggs, kind of seasonal appropriate. They have, Tom smokes brisket and ribs and all those kind of things. He has these huge smokers he brings over and has his stuff smoking all day long. A lot of the young people I knew from when I was up at Stony Point are there. A lot of the young people who've been involved in the Search for Christian Maturity Retreat that I was a pastoral guide in were there. So we know, we're usually the oldest people there, but we know everybody, so we don't really feel that old, even though nobody has gray hair there, except not one, not one. But it's always a lot of fun. And then at night there is a big fireworks display. From the time what they do is they go out to Pennsylvania. And I love this. You know, if you live in Pennsylvania, you can't go into the stores and buy fireworks. So you go to walk in the door in Pennsylvania and they check your license. If you're from another state, you can come in and buy fireworks. But both of those states, it's illegal to buy fireworks. I don't know how they get away with that. It's just amazing. I'm glad they can, because Tom, when they used to do it in his house, and the neighbors would give him money to buy fireworks, because the town didn't do a fireworks display there. That was their neighborhood fireworks display, because from the time they lit the fuse on the first thing, they would mount them all together, so they were all hooked together, until the last shell fired. It was about 20 minutes long. I mean, it's a real long, nice fireworks display. And then one year, these guys in a car with lights on top of it in uniforms came over and said, "You can't do that." Turns out that their neighbor, who happened to be from Poland, not really part of the fellowship of the neighborhood, called the cops and complained. So everything got loaded in the back of the pickup trucks. We ran over to Eric's house. Eric is a guy who, very close friend of Tom's, who I confirmed, and we went over to his house, and we took the fireworks over to Eric's house, so that we don't run into that same problem with this guy. I mean, you know, like I said, it's like a 20-minute display. It doesn't have the huge commercial things, but a lot of things that look like those when they go up. Who's seen the fireworks they do on the lake here? They do a heck of a job. The Lake Pacon Yacht Club's been doing that for like 100 years or something, I understand. I usually go down to the Jefferson House because it's got a great view. The interesting thing is you're still so far away, the shell goes off and like a second later it's boom. And it's jammed. I always take my bike so I can find a place to park, because everybody goes there, and they do a big buffet and all that kind of stuff. And when I was a kid, Dad used to do fireworks in the backyard. Now what Dad did, he worked in the city, he was senior examiner for the Federal Reserve Bank, so you're downtown, in the area of Chinatown. I wonder where he got his fireworks from. And what he'd do is he'd have a bucket of sand out in the middle of the yard, and he'd stick a Roman candle in it, and light Roman candle, and walk away, and all the little kids would go, ooh, ah, all that kind of stuff, you know? And we had sparklers and some fountains and stuff, one thing at a time. It was a pretty small fireworks display. It was the thing that got me going, and that's what got Tom going. Would you go to a fireworks display for the fireworks, not for the fellowship and the food and all those kind of things, but go to a fireworks display that was a small little fireworks display, like with my dad? Would you make a point of going to something like that? I mean, it's just, you know, to get ready, to go travel over to the place and go there and watch poof, 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 yay, ooh, ah, yeah, no, not so much. Now, I will brave the traffic over here at the Jefferson House. That's coming Saturday, by the way. It was canceled because of the weather the other night. To watch that fireworks display, because that's a big fireworks display. And Terry and I always go up to Tom's house to watch it because it's a big fireworks display. Because we are impressed by things big, and things loud, and things bright, and attention-grabbing. I mean, do you pay attention to stuff that's boring? No. You know, why is Donald Trump getting so much attention? Because he's bold and brash, and he's attention-grabbing. Like him or hate him, you can't dismiss that because that's his shtick. It's always been his shtick. It was his shtick when he did the Woolman Rink in Central Park. It was his shtick when he got in Atlantic City. And now it's his same shtick that he's using running for president. He's loud and he's bold and he's brash and can't ignore him. You can try, but yeah, it would be pretty hard to ignore him, wouldn't it? Yeah, he's loud and bold and brash. I mean, that's what we give value to. There have been candidates who ran for president who were very, very qualified. They had been in government for a number of years. They had foreign policy experience. They had economic experience. They worked well with people. They had good ideas as far as what needed to be done and how it needed to be done. But their personalities weren't flamboyant. Once TV came around, they couldn't get elected. Remember the Nixon-Kennedy debates? If you say yes, you're dating yourself. That was a while ago. I remember them. I was little, but I do remember them. One of the things that hurt Nixon in those debates, first off, Kennedy, very, very charismatic, very, very personable. Nixon, kind of a not charismatic person, let's just put it that way. As they were getting ready for the televised debates, the first ever televised presidential debates, the makeup people came on, they went to Kennedy and they put makeup on him. They came to Nixon and wanted to put makeup on him, and Nixon refused. Guy, I don't remember. He didn't understand television. So he came off as looking haggard and gaunt and just horrible, as opposed to this vibrant young man over here. Who do you want as a leader? Nixon lost. Flashiness, bigness, excitement. That's what grabs us. That's what we pay attention to. This story in the Old Testament that Ed read. Now, this Elisha is the same guy who walked around with Elijah and saw Elijah taken up in the whirlwind, picked up the mantle, or the robe, the cape, whatever you want to call it. Elijah hit the water with it and it separated. And Elisha did the same thing and it separated the same way. I don't know if that was kind of a test or he just had to go across it to get back or what. But he became the man of God. He's referred to that way quite often in the scriptures. And there is this guy in this army that has taken over Israel. He's conquered Israel. And yes, there's a king in Israel, but he's kind of like the king in a country that is being looked over by others. Think Herod under Rome. Okay. Israel was controlled by Rome in Jesus' time, but Herod was the king in Israel. And this was the same kind of scenario. And there is this officer who is a brilliant general. He has got all kinds of wins for his king. His king loves this guy because he's been able to do things for him and make the country greater, make it grow, and all these kind of things. But the guy has lost. And as often happens in military conquests, to the winners go the spoils. You remember that saying? And the spoils in those kind of conquests were frequently slaves. And so they took slaves, as was the tradition. And one of those slaves was a woman who ended up in Naaman's house. And she was his wife's slave. And she told the woman, the wife of Naaman, that it's so bad that it must have been a decent guy to her, even though he was a slave, because she said, look, he could, there's a prophet that could heal him. You wouldn't say that if you really hated the guy. You'd want him to suffer. So you got to figure that he treated her decently. And she says this to her mistress, who goes to her husband. Her husband goes to the king and tells him what the slave girl said. And the king said, yeah, go, here's a letter of introduction to the king of Israel. You get through there. And they go and they hand the letter to the king, and the king looks at it and figures that this king is trying to pick a fight. He's going to come and attack again. Tears his clothes, sign of repentance and anger and stuff like that. Elisha hears this and says, why are you tearing your clothes? Why are you so upset? Send the guy to me. And then those people will know that there is a prophet in Israel. And by inference, God. So Naaman and his entourage travels to the house of Elisha. Now, he's a big important guy, right? He's got the favor of the king. He's a general of the armies. He's important. He's got all these people traveling with him. He's got money and stuff to give as gifts because that was the tradition at the time. And he goes to Elisha's house and he expects Elisha to come out and wave his hands over him, pray, do some big thing, call down lightning from heaven or thunder or have an earthquake or something big and lay hands on him and heal him. But what he does is he just sends out a servant to say, go wash in the Jordan River. You ever see pictures of the Jordan River? There's a lot of pictures of it because, that's where Jesus was baptized. And so you see pictures of it. Every picture I've ever seen of it it's muddy. It's a muddy looking river. Not the kind of river you'd think, well, if I go in there, I'll get clean. You're thinking if I go in there, I'm going to get dirty. So the guy has a fit. Yelling, screaming, and, who does he think he is? And the servant comes to him, there's this servant, and they play like such key roles in this story. And he comes up and says, listen, if the prophet had told you to do something big and exciting and hard and all this, wouldn't you have done it? And all he told you was do this little thing. Why not? So he goes, yeah, you know what? You're right. What am I about to lose? And he goes and dips himself in the Jordan 7 times like the prophet said, and guess what happened? He was healed. That old phrase, sounds too good to be true. We've all experienced that one way or another, right? Some guy calls you up on the telephone. Solar cells are available from the government for your house and it'll save you money and maybe even make you money. Yeah, click. Right. Sounds too good to be true. When we think of interaction with God, our minds frequently go to stories like the Exodus. If you remember the Exodus, God shows up in this bush that's burning, but not being consumed by the flames. Kind of a spectacular thing. That's how God comes to people, right? He makes all these things happen. Nile River turns to blood, frogs, boils, hail that comes down and hits the ground and turns into flames. The sun going dark in the middle of the day. The death of the firstborn. Very spectacular, upfront images of God's power. Demonstrations of God's power. Very, very flashy, bold. When Pharaoh eventually lets the Israelites go, they go over to the Red Sea or the Reed Sea. He tells Moses, and all of a sudden here comes Pharaoh's army, and their backs are against the sea, and they're stuck. What happens? Well, a pillar of fire shows up in front of the army, blocking its way. And he tells Moses, take your staff and lift it up to the river, to the waters. And he stays there all night. The wind begins to blow, and in the morning there is a dry path through. And that pillar of fire stayed there the whole time, holding back the Egyptian army. So the Israelites go down into the water, and they're going through. Prince of Egypt shows this, and you see the walls of water they're going through, and there's whales and stuff in there. That's a cartoon version of it. It's actually very, very good. It's worth watching. And as they're almost through to the other side, the pillar of fire disappears. Pharaoh's army goes down into the water. Very good cinematic representations of this. The chariot drivers are kind of like looking like they're freaking out, which I have to expect was what was going on. The Israelites come out the other side, and the water comes together and wipes out the most powerful army in the world. Powerful, bold demonstration of God's power and presence. Jesus, walking on water, healing people born blind, restoring their sight just by a touch or putting some mud in their eyes. Feeding 5,000 people with a couple little barley loaves and some sardines. Spectacular, bold demonstrations of God's power. If you read The Upper Room, this morning's devotion talked about this woman whose grandmother was dying. And her brother, I believe it was her brother, prayed that God would ease her suffering and be with her so that she didn't feel pain as she passed. And the woman, who this woman referred to as Nan, said, "How is Jesus keeping me so warm?" And they took that as affirmation of that prayer being answered. The prayer to keep her from pain and suffering as she passes. Now, an awful lot of people would look at that and say, well, you know, if the body dies, this happens chemically and this, and creates a feeling of warmth and blah, 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 blah. Because it wasn't big and powerful and spectacular. It was subtle. A couple weeks ago, we read a story about Elijah, where Elijah was trying to get away from Jezebel. He was hiding in the mountains. He was in a cave. And God told Elijah, come out of the cave. And there's a huge earthquake. But God wasn't in the earthquake. And then there was a big fire. But God wasn't in that big, bold fire. And there was a quiet wind. God was in the wind. In the quiet, in the subtle, in the mountain. One thing I've noticed is God, when God comes, God gives you what you need in the way that you need it. And you know what? Sometimes that is big and bold and powerful and attention-grabbing and all those kind of things, because we do see those kind of things happen. But my experience has been more the subtle, the quiet. It lets me know in the midst of something miserable that God is with me the whole time. That no matter what's going on, God is there with me in the middle of it. In a 24/7 society that we live in, that provides massive amounts of stimulation for our senses, it's easy to miss the quietness of it. There's a saying that really speaks to that. When you're wondering whether or not God is with you, when you're wondering whether or not those promises of God really mean something, take advice of that very old saying. Stop. Take time to stop and smell the roses. Because when we keep rushing through everything, we can miss God like that. We won't miss that earthquake, we won't miss that big fire, but that subtle, quiet wind. It's easy to not pay attention. So be open to God in the quiet times, small times. And you will see God in the midst of your life, in the good times and in the struggles. Because God has said that He will never, ever, ever leave you or forsake you. And so seek God and be ready to be blessed. Let's pray.